All right. Still dealing with some technical stuff. If somebody is hearing me right now, just put a little comment in the notes or in the chat so I know. Um, so I'm going to go from the top here. As of right now, I'm about 5 minutes behind when I said I was going to go live. Technical difficulties. That's what you get when you have a strength coach guiding as a um, doing all the IT work here. My name is Aaron Shaw. I am a strength coach, health band coach, athlete, and I'm here today to talk about electrolytes and why, whether you're an athlete or not, how valuable electrolytes really are for us. So the agenda for the next 30 to 60 minutes or so is going to be talking about what electrolytes are, what the health benefits are, why we need them for to be built into our nutrition and hydration plan. We're going to talk about sources of electrolytes, including that's which naturally in our food, which we should have in our diet regularly, but also supplements and some do-it-yourself recipes. So I thankfully I got a few people who share some recipes with me, so I'll share those with you. And I'm going to make sure that we know the numbers, like how much. This is like the $1 million question, like how much electrolytes do I need? Like how do I know I'm getting enough? And so what I'll do is review what what's kind of like what is expected for like the average, daily allowance, if you will. But also, we need to put in some parameters here because those of us that are going to be outside sweating a lot, losing some electrolytes, we're going to need maybe more than typical. So we're going to cover all that as well. So again, my name is Aaron Shaw, and all the information that's in here that I'm going to be going over, especially the details once I get into the numbers, I will share on my website, which I'll put a link in the notes to this video. So we are going to talk about the numbers of how much sodium and potassium and everything you need, and also some recipes again. And it's just too much to put on like a YouTube description. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to create a blog to kind of summarize everything. But let's start off by thinking about what comes to mind, I should say, is my personal preference for electrolytes. And I'll start with a story from yesterday where I went on a big mountain bike ride. Big for me, it was 25 miles and hot and humid. It was like 90 or 95% humidity. And it is, it was certainly a test of how to make sure I'm fueling myself and making sure that I don't sweat out more electrolytes than I can really sustain, so I can keep, keeping my activity. And part of that story includes being attacked by a swarm of bees. So, not really much you can do about that from an electrolyte standpoint. But as I stand here right now, I am covered in welts from being swarmed up in the mountains of North Carolina. So, electrolytes are not, if you're outside playing in the woods, playing in the deep woods, be careful and be ready to sprint at a moment's notice. So, with that, what are electrolytes? Let's talk about what electrolytes are, what that actually means. So, electrolytes are minerals that have an electrical charge. So, literally have an electrical charge. The main ones that we want to think about, there are several, but the main ones that we're going to think about are going to be sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And we lose these through sweat. It's very natural. It's part of when you sweat, you lose some of these electrolytes. But we need them for certain functions within our body, whether you're out sweating like crazy in a 95% humidity kind of day, or whether you're in your garden, or whether you're just functioning on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. So what do electrolytes do for us? A couple things. They do play a role in hydration. So what the electrolytes really do is kind of maintain this. I always think of this as like the Goldilocks balance of making sure that your cells have enough fluid, but not too much fluid. So almost like, not too wet and not too dry. And electrolytes really work in that balance to make sure that your tissue is hydrated, your cells are hydrated just enough when you have the just right balance of that. Additionally, electrolytes benefit or are part of nerve function. So how our nerves function, how the nerves transmit signals to the muscles, how the nerves transmit signals throughout our body on regulating how we're moving, how we're engaging, how our physical performance is. it's essential that we have electrolytes for this. And so you can think if you are compromising the amount of electrolytes that you have in your system, your nervous system cannot function as well, which means, of course, your performance is going to be compromised. So you may not be able to lift, jump, push, pull, run, dig in the garden, whatever it is, if your nervous system isn't communicating well enough with your muscles and your coordination, your balance. And this can be because of being deficient in electrolytes. Electrolytes are important for muscle function. They're we need these electrolytes for our muscles to contract and relax. And this is what a lot of people think about with electrolytes is cramping. So if you've ever cramped while exercising, and I'll speak from my forte, which is cycling. When you cramp when you're cycling, it is a game changer. Basically, the rest of your day is done, and certainly having a being deficient in electrolytes can lead to cramping, muscle cramping, and it sucks. And you can actually have delayed soreness for days and days and days afterwards from a muscle cramp. But with that, I want to be clear that just because you cramp does not mean that you are deficient in electrolytes. You can cramp from exceeding and really kind of pushing your body's capacity for an activity, for performance, and cramp, yet be perfectly well hydrated, have plenty of carbohydrates, have great electrolyte, you know, intake and supplements or whatever, and you can still cramp. So be mindful that if you cramp, certainly we need to assess the volume of electrolytes you've been consuming, which we'll talk about the numbers here in a minute. But it's not an automatic, or it's not the only potential cause for having these muscle cramps, but it's something to keep an eye on. The last thing I'll talk about for what electrolytes do for us is that they really keep a pH balance in our body. So that's basically how acidic or alkaline our body is. And it's that pH balance is really essential for a lot of these biochemical reactions that happen that think we don't have to think about. But in order for those to function properly, we have to have enough electrolytes in our system to communicate this through our body. So it's essential having the right amount of electrolytes. So in summary, I would say, why are they valuable for us? Function. Hard stop. Muscle function, nerve function, biochemical balance have to have enough electrolytes. So where do we get them? So I'm going to kind of talk through where we get them from, and then we're going to dig into what the numbers, like how much, which is like the $1,000,000 question, like how much sodium do I need? But first, let's talk about what are good sources of electrolytes. And so I think I'm sitting here with like a little electrolyte container in front of me, a little Noon hydration electrolyte container right next to me, which is great, but we actually have electrolytes are in foods. And so once upon a time, before there were laboratories creating concoctions of supplements, um, people would just get electrolytes through food. And so common foods that should be in your diet for one, just for a straight up healthy diet, but are also rich in electrolytes include bananas, which are high in potassium. They actually have over 400 milligrams of potassium, which is awesome. Oranges, spinach, avocados, sweet potatoes, yogurt, calcium's in yogurt, so that's an electrolyte, nuts and seeds, leafy greens, and tomatoes. So, I mean, right off the top of that, you can kind of think you've got a couple of fruits, which you should be snacking on during the day. You've got basically the ingredients of a salad, which you should have once a day at least, a nice robust salad. And another thing I didn't mention was coconut water. So there are things that should be in your pantry, in your refrigerator all the time that you are consuming all the time that will help make sure that you have the the fuel, the amount of electrolytes that you need to function well, and then prepare yourself. It'll help prepare you for when you do want to go out and do an athletic event. In that case, once you do this athletic event where you're going to be sweating more, you'll be able to top off with a supplement. But we need to make sure that you have like the base amount on a regular day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. And then the icing on the cake is when you can supplement because you've got something very specific to do. So that's some highlights for what you can put into your diet. But there are, I mean, I got a list here in front of me of some electrolyte drinks and supplements. I'll name off some brands. I have no affiliation with any of them, but there's Noon, Element, Scratch Labs, Gatorade, Ultima, Clean Athlete, EFS, Pedialyte, Liquid IV, Hammer Nutrition, and about 90 other ones. These are all different companies that have, most of them have like several variations of electrolytes or electrolyte drink mixes. And so these would be used to supplement in addition to this amazing healthy diet that we just talked about you having. And there are do-it-yourself, make your own electrolyte mixes. And so I'm going to share a couple of recipes of those. So let's talk about our daily needs. So here's the question. What is a typical daily requirement of electrolytes? What's the typical requirement? And again, I'll put this in the blog so you'll see all these numbers so you don't need to like memorize it for a test or anything right now. But typical daily requirements for sodium, so you can think salt, is 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams of sodium. For potassium, 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams. And calcium, 1,000 milligrams. Magnesium, 300 milligrams. So those are let's just say like the big players of the electrolyte world. So those numbers, which again I'll document so you'll be able to see those are the typical daily requirements. Now the question is, one, are you getting enough? And two, how fast do you kind of burn through these? Like how fast do you utilize this? So if you were topped off those at the typical requirements on a day-to-day basis, if you were topped off, the question is, well, how quickly are you going to burn through that? And this is where it gets really complicated because everybody burns through these at a different pace. And so I think that the question would be, do you identify yourself as a person who sweats a lot or maybe somebody who doesn't sweat a lot? That can make a difference on how quickly you are losing these electrolytes. So actually during really hot, if somebody's exercising in really hot weather and getting after it quite a bit, you can lose up to a liter of sweat in an hour, which is a ton. And of course, with that, all these electrolytes are being flushed out as well. So you can really start to deteriorate your storage of electrolytes. But how do you know how much you personally sweat? Well, there are actually devices out there that I have yet to try. So it's on my to-do list, this kind of experiment with these. But there are devices out there that will measure your unique loss of electrolytes, your sweat loss. And there's a couple different ways to do it. There are like patches. And so there's, Gatorade GX has a sweat patch. There's a Kenzen patch. And there's several other patches that are out there now. And there's also wearables. There's biosensors that are out there now. So one of them is Nick's hydration biosensor. And this would be, I guess, a sort of like I got my Whoop on here. So this would be something you kind of strap on your arm while you're out exercising, while you're performing, whatever activity you are. And it's going to be measuring your sweat output and measuring your electrolyte loss to give you real numbers to work with. And I can't speak to the accuracy of these devices or any of these wearables, but I think there is something to be said for you measuring your, over days and weeks at least, what your typical loss is, what your nutrition is, what are you supplementing with, and how you feel. And so, I mean, for as much as I love being nerdy science and getting into the numbers, it comes down to how you feel. So whether you're above average or below average, whatever that may be, whatever these numbers are, and you feel like, oh, I don't get enough, or I'm kind of over in certain numbers. If you feel great, that's the win. That is the win. Hard stop. That's awesome. The risk, of course, is when you don't feel well, or if you feel well sometimes and not other times, it's nice to have this data where you can see maybe your electrolyte intake isn't matching how much you lose when you do certain activity. And so to have these numbers would give you an opportunity to fine tune your diet, fine tune what you're consuming, and make sure you're getting the absolute most out of it. So the signs of not having enough electrolytes, if you're running low on electrolytes, we already talked about muscle cramping a little bit, but dizziness, being zapped of energy, And, you could actually have some like literally like mental confusion, just kind of feeling fuzzy headed. So those are common signs of being at a detriment with electrolytes, but also it's pretty common, same basic symptoms if you are low on carbohydrates. So if you're low on carbs, sugars, and you're out running, or again, you're outside, working in the yard or riding your bike or whatever it is, feeling generally like you're bonking and feeling like crap. I mean, that is kind of it in a nutshell of a whole bunch of potential causes of that. So it could be electrolytes, could be carbohydrates, but it is a red flag. So if you're out there putting in a hard effort and you start to really lose it, and certainly if you start to feel crampy, like in a sense, if you're cramping when you're out there and you realize, like, again, the example of being on a bike, if you start cramping when you're doing stuff, you're done. You're already over the limit. You're already probably on an empty tank of some sort of fuel source, and you're in a danger zone. So that's kind of a red light. Of course, you may have to gimp your way out of a trail or find your way to get back to replenish your fuel sources. But you want to be super mindful. And again, this is where tracking comes in handy, and making sure that you know about what you're consuming and make sure that that stays on point, and then you can plan ahead, which in a few minutes here, I'll talk about how to dose your electrolyte intake before, during, and after exercise. So I'm going to read off some numbers again. So during heavy sweating, uh, those of us that are sweating our butts off outside, we can lose a lot of electrolytes per hour. So I'm going to give this as a number per hour. So we already talked about people who sweat a lot, or if you're in a, maybe you don't identify yourself as a heavy sweater, but um, if you are outside and it's hot and it's humid, like I said at the beginning, if it's 95 degrees humidity out, or 95 degrees, 95% humidity and hot, and you're sweating like crazy, we can lose up to a liter of sweat. And with that, flushing out a bunch of electrolytes. So here's how much you can lose in an hour of these electrolytes. So sodium, you can lose anywhere from 5 to 1,500 or more milligrams of sodium um, per hour. Potassium, a couple hundred uh, milligrams per hour. Magnesium, 10 to 20 milligrams per hour. And some of these are actually, you're losing almost the entire suggested daily allotment. So you can actually sweat out if you are just barely meeting the requirements of your daily electrolyte needs. In an hour, you could sweat all of that out and have all of it be gone, which really just kind of indicates that depending on what you're doing, you are going to want to, really top off your electrolyte storage, because you can flush that out in an hour of hard exercise in hot weather. So we think about how we can supplement this. So we know we can sweat out a bunch, and now we got to think during exercise, how much can we replenish? And this is what's tough with, this goes for calories, carbohydrates, and electrolytes. The rate at which you lose it is faster than the rate at which you can consume it. So if you are out and you are, burning a bunch of calories, burning through a bunch of sugar, and burning through a lot of electrolytes, you cannot drink enough. You cannot consume enough to replenish that. So at best, you're going to have a slow, decrease in your storage, which makes it super important that before you start an event, before you start an activity, that you are already topped off, because no matter what you do, no matter how many noon tablets or drink mixes you put in and you consume, you're not going to be able to keep up with your loss. So you can lose, we already talked about you can lose a lot of stuff, but as far as like what you can consume, so how much your body can actually absorb during your exercise when you're out there on the bike. Sodium, during exercise, you can consume per hour, your body will absorb 300 to 600 milligrams of sodium per hour. That's how much your body can typically absorb, 300 to 600 milligrams per hour. So you can lose, we already talked about, there are some numbers out there in some studies that show you can lose 1,600 milligrams in an hour, but at best, your body's going to be able to absorb 600. So if you are really getting after it, you are going to be at a net loss, and then have this risk for muscle cramping and confusion and all that sort of stuff. The problem is that if you try to consume more than that, and if you really try to like double down, you can overdo supplementation. So if you have, especially, and everybody's unique, so this is different for everybody, but generally speaking, if you have over around 600 milligrams of sodium, that can lead to some GI distress, which is a total bummer when you're out in the trails doing stuff. Um, for potassium, 100 to 300 milligrams per hour is about what you can absorb. If you overdo that, that can lead to a condition called hyperkalemia, which affects your heart, which you don't want to mess with that. And the last one I'll point out is magnesium. So 20 to 50 milligrams of magnesium per hour can be lost. So you're out there, you're getting after it. Up to 50 milligrams of magnesium can be lost. Maybe you have it in a supplement. Maybe you put it in a supplement in your bottle. But once you get over 50 milligrams, if you're trying to chug down something that has a higher amount of magnesium than that, it can lead to diarrhea, which, I mean, there's a lot of things that really suck if you're out there, working out and exercising or doing whatever. Like I may have mentioned at the beginning, I got attacked by a swarm of bees yesterday when I was out mountain biking, and not good. But I don't know. I think it'd be better than having an issue with diarrhea out in the middle of nowhere. So pick your poison. So I guess. So don't overdo it. Is the point? Like, don't overload and think like, well, I'm just going to, like, for sodium, don't dump tablespoons and tablespoons of salt into a water bottle, thinking like I'm going to triple my consumption of it, because there are going to be consequences, physiological consequences. So now that we know what electrolytes are, we know that we lose a lot, and if you're really sweating a lot, you can lose far more than you're able to consume. We know that there's a limit to, or there are consequences if we try to um, maybe over replenish our these electrolytes. So, and we know that you are already have this great diet that is full of electrolytes, which I already talked about. Like, you have a nutrition. But now we realize, okay, well, I'm going to go out on the ride. I'm going to go out on the run. I'm going to be out. I'm going to be sweating. What are some supplements that we can use um, to make sure that we're replenishing ourselves as much as possible? And this is tough because everybody has a palate. Some people love salt. Some people can't stand salt. Same thing with sugars, with something being too sweet. Personally, I'm not a sweet person. Oh, I'm not a sweet person. Uh, I I am will always go towards salt. Um, anything that's too sweet is hard for me to drink. And even on the hottest days, I will always have probably a majority of water, and then just have like a concentrated supplement in a bottle. So I can consume as much of that as possible. And then I know people who just can choke down, just bottles full of sweet supplement stuff, whether it's carbohydrates or electrolytes. And that's great. If you can tolerate it, great. But everybody is unique. So I'm going to list off a couple of pretty common um, brands, and just, again, I'll give you these numbers. I'm going to put all this in a blog post so you can kind of look back, because it's hard to remember all these numbers. But just to kind of give a range on what's in different supplements. And I'm going to focus on sodium, potassium, and magnesium. So as a review, what we're going to be looking for is, per hour, trying to supplement during these hot rides or sweaty things you're doing, 300 to 600 milligrams of sodium, 1 to 300 milligrams of potassium, 25 to 50 milligrams of magnesium per hour. If we can consume those numbers, those ranges, you're probably within the range that your body, most people will tolerate that without having consequences of overdoing it. And you'll be really kind of just, which basically means you'll just be going to be tapping out the most you can possibly get. So with those numbers in mind, here are some brands. We got Clean Athlete, which is a brand that I used back when I was racing my road bike all the time. Sodium. This is hindsight. I look back. I'm like, man, if I could relive those days, I'd certainly make some better decisions on my nutrition. Clean Athlete has a hydration that is 180 milligrams of sodium, 70 milligrams of potassium, 25 milligrams of magnesium, which is actually everything's kind of low, which is a bummer because I was using a lot, using that a lot. I'm going to go on the other end of the spectrum here, and this is where I would love somebody's point of view on this. Is surprisingly, I haven't tried this yet. Element. um, this I've seen people talk about how this is salty to them, which would make sense. Excuse me, because Element, which if it's salty, it may actually be right up my alley. 1,000 milligrams of sodium, so it's super high in sodium. 200 and 600 for potassium and magnesium. I have heard people talk about how the price point is a little bit higher, so that may be a deterrent for some people. But again, we all have financial limitations in some way. If you're out in the backwoods and you're cramping, I'm sure you would spend $10 for a bottle of something that would get you through. So be mindful. So maybe something that is higher, has higher amounts of these electrolytes would actually be worth it at some point. So Element seems to be on the other end of the spectrum, like really high. Scratch Labs, I use those a lot. 380 milligrams of sodium and 50 and 50 for potassium and magnesium. So that's pretty good. Gatorade. So I was, thinking through all these. Uh, I guess on the scheme of things, these are maybe newer brands, and the OG is Gatorade, right? So I mean, and it was, excuse me, brought to my attention from my wife, who's a Gator, to bring this up. And so I looked at, and Gatorade has many, many, many brands, or excuse me, like sub brands, not to mention flavors and unusual colors to their bottles. So I compared Gatorade Zero to Gator Endurance Formula. And so I see Gatorade Zero in a typical store. I always think about it when I go to fill up gas, and you go in a gas station, like that's what they have. Um, Isaac, you're telling me Gatorade Pro Endurance powder? Okay, at best, too sweet. Yeah, thanks for that, but that's it probably wouldn't work with my palate. But the numbers for Gatorade Zero, and again, this is all via internet here, but it's 160 milligrams of sodium, 50 of potassium, so pretty low, like actually really low for a sodium at least. And then there's Gatorade Endurance Formula, and that has 620 milligrams of sodium, 280 of potassium, 10 of magnesium. So if I were to look at those, and again, I'll put this all on a blog, and there'll be, see if I can get a wider swath of things to kind of compare. The Gatorade Endurance Formula actually looks pretty, pretty balanced, balanced even towards like the higher end of what we can tolerate. So that's great in my mind. At least that's what I was, you know, wish I had some of that yesterday. And Element looks like the other one. So um, I would ask. So Isaac, you're saying you think Element is better? Do you think it's from a performance standpoint or palate standpoint, maybe? Um, Gatorade, yeah, some Gatorades can be a little bit sweet and just weird tasting. I don't know if it's because I look at the color of what's in the bottle. That's sort of off-putting. Um, performance. Okay, so I think I'm going to be getting myself some Element here. So that's all the stuff you can buy, or a spec of what you can kind of buy to supplement. But let's think about DIY. So if anybody has recipes of what you've done or what you've even added to a supplement, I've heard of some people taking like a Noon and putting salt on top of it or something like that in their bottle. So if you have a recipe, let me know. Here is a fairly common one that is um, what I'm going to try later today, actually, just for the sake of trying it. So it's a couple cups of water, quarter teaspoon of salt, quarter cup of orange juice. Strangely, I can't remember the last time I had orange juice, but it certainly makes sense from a electrolyte and sugar standpoint. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then plus or minus honey or maple syrup for some sweetness. So with that, stir it up. If you put the honey or maple syrup, you're going to stir it up and kind of let it dissolve in there together and refrigerate it. But the profile is 575 milligrams of sodium, 140 of potassium. And now, magnesium and calcium are also really good electrolytes, and they're just harder to come by. So whenever I've looked up um, some of these recipes, they always talk about supplementing, as opposed to finding, salt or juice or something like that. Like if you really want to get magnesium and calcium, you have to kind of find that and put a little scoop of that in. But with that, that seems like it'd be pretty tasty. Again, assuming I can still drink orange juice because I just haven't done it in such a long time. But the numbers look really good. And uh, I'm not an economist here, but I'm sure that's probably pennies on the dollar as far as um, like what you're getting in. So I am going to experiment with this and you know probably save a bunch of money on electrolytes. Another recipe I'm going to give a shout out to Sean Gentry, who shared his electrolyte mix. He's a mountain biker and a mountain bike coach. He does a teaspoon of pink Himalayan sea salt, half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, which I looked up, and so that's about 250 milligrams of potassium. Does a lemon, adds some magnesium powder, and 24 ounces of water. So mix all that up, put it on ice, give that a go. That's Sean's secret recipe. Look at some of the comments here up. Target brand is a generic liquid IV or better. Still researching that. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Tatiana. Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to Element and see if trying a bunch of different stuff. Maybe I'll get a free sample and I'll be my own. Like I like to do my own lab rat um, and try these things out. And in addition to trying to make my own here, so I guess that's if I have the wherewithal. Is a factor of being lazy, I guess, is part of it, where I can just like plop something in my bottle versus it's not super hard, but I should take more time and really kind of get the perfect concoction for me and then just have it and just know I can just knock it out. So maybe that's an assignment that I'm going to give myself. So let's recap real quick. We talked about the basic daily allowance, if you will, recommended just for everybody. We talked about you can lose up to a liter of sweat per hour if it's super humid. And with that, a whole bunch of electrolytes. You can lose far more electrolytes than you can consume. So there's a ceiling to how much your body can accommodate, just like anything else. And so it's a little side note if you're one of these like bodybuilder types who are just consuming tons of protein for the sake of getting in tons of protein, most of that you're flushing down the drain because your body just cannot absorb this, can't absorb everything if it's super high volume. But if you have a well-balanced diet where your basic nutrition is really fulfilling those basic needs, and then you can think about supplementing for very specific events or very specific activities that you're going to be doing, probably going to be spot on. We can measure. So there are the sweat patches, there's wearables that we have now that again, I haven't tried those, but I think I'm going to explore that to see, you know, uh, really try to get some data, really try to get some true numbers for when you are out on a hard ride or a hard run or just out in the sun sweating like crazy. Like, what are you really, really losing? And are you supplementing or are you like recovering from that? Um, and also it'll give you kind of a sense of like, how do you prepare ahead of time, which is what we're going to talk about now. So let's talk about timing of electrolytes. When should we be taking it? If you are going out, and again, just for perspective, yesterday I did was out on a really hot ride, 95% humidity. If I did not preload or prepare for the ride and just got on the bike and started riding and then said, oh, I need time to start drinking some electrolytes, it's too late. You really need to have a healthy diet that has this nice solid base of electrolytes. And then when you think about timing for an event, think about before exercise, 30 to 60 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes before your sweaty event, have I would say a water bottle, but like 6 to 20 ounces of an electrolyte mix. One that suits your palate, that is easy for you to drink, but you're going to want to have 30 to 60 minutes for your body to start to absorb that. So chugging it and then hopping on the bike and getting after it, not quite long enough for your body to really like, put it into storage so it's ready to use. So plan ahead for that 30 to 60 minutes during exercise. And this is, I could maybe in a separate soapbox or a separate rant. I think people sacrifice their performance by not eating enough or drinking enough while exercising. And again, my um, my focus and my experience is cycling because that's what I do. But the same exact thing for running, and really the same thing for you're outside doing any sort of physical activity and you're just hot and you're sweaty, whatever it is. Or if you're doing an inside class, it's probably even worse. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been to an indoor spin class, but it's like a sauna and it's brutal. Um, but every 20 minutes or so, you need to be chugging some of your drink mix. You need to be trying to replenish some of your carbohydrates. So we burn through these things again far faster than we can absorb them. So if you start getting behind, or if you wait until you are hungry, or you wait until you're starting to feel a little crampy, I mean, certainly if you feel that, like try to play catch up, but you are kind of screwed if you may actually be maybe too late. So whether you're thirsty or not, whether you're hungry or not, every 15, maybe 20 minutes when I'm on the bike, it's a gel pack, it's a sip of a electrolyte drink. 15 to 20 minutes later, it's again and again and again and again. Um, so again, think about a bottle an hour. It's basically the way to think about it. Um, and then after exercise. So within the first 30 minutes after an exercise, you're going to want to rehydrate. And ideally, you'd be rehydrating with something that is also rich in electrolytes and possibly a whole bunch of sugar as well. I'll probably do a separate, podcast and live on just recovery drink mixes and stuff. You're going to find that's the same sort of scheme where it's, real food in addition to, to a supplement that you can absorb quickly, perhaps. So I'm a fan of, a banana and yogurt after a ride or after a hard event. Real food kind of fill up your stomach a little bit. You get really good electrolyte recovery from that. You get some calories from that. But if you get a recovery drink that is like that, again, you've practiced, you've tasted it, making sure your stomach can tolerate it. Excuse me, but it's a great way knowing that at that point you've really kind of diminished your stores. You've been trying to keep up as best you can, but the reality is you've probably, you're probably at a net zero or net, net negative overall. So in that first 30 minutes, once you're, back to your vehicle or whatever you're doing, take pause. I mean, if you can pause before you have that first cold pint of beer and fill your stomach with electrolytes and nutrition that will like start refilling that stuff, then go to the beer if you can help that, if you can do that. Um, Tatiana says Himalayan salt in a bag, taking it with you. That's smart. Um, yeah, salt is always good. So that's, you're thinking sodium when you do that. So good points on that. So we've got as far as timing before exercise. So think about maybe even think like an hour before exercise. You're taking a bottle and you're going to finish that bottle before, an hour, starting an hour before you're exercising. And even before that, your lifestyle super dialed, your nutrition is dialed. You've got well balanced diet. You've got really good electrolytes in your nutrition anyhow. An hour before you're drinking your bottle, during exercise every 15 to 20 minutes, after exercise within 30 minutes, you're finishing off another recovery drink and having some food that is rich in electrolytes. Put all that together, and you've got the best chance for really reaching your true potential. So I think all of us are, if we're health minded and we really want to not even compete necessarily, but just really make sure that we're as durable as we can be. We have, the stamina to live a long, vibrant life. These things, the electrolytes matter. And again, even if you're not like competing against things, it doesn't matter. Like we need electrolytes to function well and to learn things like this, just to be a little bit mindful of, hey, I can make sure I have a balanced diet. That's going to be great. For every food that I listed off at the beginning has 20 other super awesome benefits for your health far beyond electrolytes. So eat a healthy, balanced diet. And then when you want to do something that is strenuous and you're going to sweat, do the extra. Get the supplement, make your own concoction, give it a shot, take the time to dial it in. And I think this is where we could all be a little bit better probably on saying, finding your perfect mix for what you're doing may actually be a project that takes a month or 2 months to find out, like, what is that just right mix that's good for your palate? Do you actually enjoy consuming? Choking it down like I've tried to do with some electrolyte supplements that the bottle looks good. It's got the right numbers on the back for me. And I just can't, I'm just suffering doing it, which is dumb because I can take the time to like fine tune exactly what to consume before, during, after. Your performance is going to be the big win. At the end of that, you're going to feel better. That I guess, the final point I'll make on this is that the after exercise, which I think people it's easy to kind of slip off on that because then, either you get social time or you want to hop in the shower or get to get back to real life and adulting. That after exercise is such an opportunity to not only capitalize on the work you've just done, to really really get the benefit from that is based upon, in part, how you recover. And that's going to start with some quick nutrition, but also the better your nutrition is immediately following your physical demands, the quicker it's going to recover, the better, ultimate strength you're going to get, or, cardiovascular health you're going to get from that. And the sooner you're going to be able to do it again and again and again and again and feel good and feel motivated from it. If you feel absolutely shattered after an event, and if you've, pushed yourself really hard, you know what that feels like. It's a little bit takes a little extra willpower to get back after it again when you may feel just kind of broken for a couple of days. And it's, once in a while, if you really push your limits, that's going to happen. You may not be able to supplement your way out of that, but don't suffer more than you have to, right? And so much of this is based upon taking pause, being mindful of your health. And so my pitch is always health span. And it's these things that take a little bit of time. It's annoying because it's not like a quick pill that will kind of solve all your problems. But man, if you invest a little bit of time in this, it's, the next month is going to go by quick anyhow. But once like, here's my nutrition, here's my strength training program, here's my cardiovascular program, here's my electrolyte program, it makes everything so much easier and so much better. And ultimately, once it's a habit, it's simple. It's super simple. Now, it's not always easy because you may have to fight the motivation or the conflict of post-ride, I just want to pound a few beers with my friends. But the simple thing is, if you have something that works for you, like a supplement, like a replenishing nutrition before you hit the beer, you know what to do. And once you know what to do, it's all within your power, and then you can go play, then you can go party after that. So all of the numbers that I put out there, I know it was like a big dump. This is kind of tough doing like the live stream kind of thing or a podcast or something too, where the numbers are important, but they're hard to I want to say digest in a sense. They're hard to digest, they're hard to remember. So I'm going to put all this into a blog on my website, healthspan-physiocoaching.com. I'll put a link in the notes down below. If you have any questions or comments about this or other topics, I read every single question, every single comment. I try to, respond either directly to people, or I'm happy to, I love nerding out about this stuff. So I'm sitting here with, reading my own nutritional packets here, and I've got my supplement drink here. And so I'm happy to be Exhibit A and, do some homework on things that can streamline kind of our knowledge base. So if there are things that you think would be worth me taking the time to do some homework on, let me know. So coming down the pike, there's going to be more things on specifically for recovery, more nutrition stuff in general. If you want to, really kind of get a regular dose of this stuff, you can sign up for my newsletter, which I'll also put a link in the notes here, where every month I put out a newsletter, and it's exercise, nutrition tips, healthy habits, ways to sleep, recover from sleep, ways to overcome injury. My background is I'm an occupational therapist and arm and hand specialist. So I've been doing that for almost 30 years in addition to strength coaching. So all of that stuff I put in a newsletter. So if that piques your interest and you just want to kind of read some stuff on your own, sign up with the link that's down below that. And thank you, everybody, for showing up. Supplement today if you need to, but most importantly, just eat a well-balanced diet. That'll get you 95% of the way there. It's not flashy. Doesn't come in a little bag or a little pill bottle or whatever, but if you eat a well-balanced diet, you're 95% of the way there for overall health, for sure. And then just be mindful of a couple of things to supplement to really kind of get that upper 5% of your performance and be consistent. So thank you. Appreciate your time. Grateful for anybody and everybody who supports me in this fun journey I'm on, sharing what I know. And until next time, any other questions before I sign off? If not, appreciate your time.